Alt season is coming, and 90% of investors are going to mess it up again. The difference between turning $1,000 into $100,000 and losing everything can be summed up in one thing, and that's preparation. And I've personally been through every single bull run since 2017, and I can promise you I have made every mistake you can imagine, and I've learned those lessons the hard way so that you don't have to. In this video, I'm going to give you the exact checklist that I'm using right now personally. The tokens that I'm selling in preparation for alt season. I'm doing a little bit of spring cleaning in my portfolio, so I'm going to go through what tokens I'm selling and why I'm selling them, how I filter out garbage during alt season, and how to spot the perfect moment to cash out before everyone else panics. Now, first off, I know a couple of you guys have already snuck off to the comment section to write some snarky reply like, there's never going to be another alt season. Alts are dead. It's all about memes now, bro. Whatever your reasoning is that you have for why we're not going to see an alt season again. And I hate to break it to you, but this is not a unique insight that you have. Okay, this is actually a very common belief held among the mass, held among what I call the sheep of the market. They're like the mini Jim Cramers of the market. They don't have the ability to be contrarian or have any form of creative thinking. They just go with the flow, and the flow has been alts have been underperforming relative to everything else. Therefore, in their minds, that's how it's always going to be, and there's no changing that. But the reality is, alt season is a byproduct of surges in global liquidity. And even one layer deeper than that, it's the byproduct of debt. It's just a massive amounts of global debt, not only with the governments, but with private individuals. The global economy runs on debt, and every time that global economy springs any sort of leak, the Band-Aid policy response is liquidity, flushing the system with liquidity to solve all of our problems, and liquidity getting pumped into the financial system pumps asset prices. And let me show you one of my favorite charts to really accent this point. We have up to this point had three insane crypto bull runs, one in 2013, one in 2017, and one in 2021. And even a child can notice on this chart three distinct mountains of liquidity centered around 2013, 2017, and 2021. Those mountains are surges in global liquidity. And every time we saw these surges in global liquidity, we saw insane crypto pumps and we saw insane alt seasons. And you might notice that since 2021, the mountains have disappeared. And instead we have these tiny little molehills of liquidity. Meaning up until this point, we haven't had the fuel necessary to create an alt season like environment. It hasn't been present in global liquidity. However, the core underlying debt dynamic hasn't changed, meaning we will get that influx in liquidity. It's a matter of when, not if. As long as governments continue to spend an unhinged amount of money, and as long as our global economy continues to run on debt, we will have these massive liquidity pulses that come into the financial system, and that will cause asset prices to go up. We will see another alt season. It is coming, and now is the time to get prepared. And I'm actually making this video right now because I'm currently myself going through this process. I believe alt season is on the horizon. It's not going to happen next month. It's not going to happen in the next 2 months. But I believe it's close enough that it's time to clean up shop to get prepared for what's coming next. And the first thing you need to do to get prepared for alt season is to know and understand the positions in your portfolio. If you're like me or anyone else in the crypto space, you likely hold a lot of different tokens, and you might not be up to date on all those tokens. And in some cases, you might not even know what those tokens really are, or what they actually do. Somebody probably just told you, hey, this is a good one to buy. You got some FOMO watching a video on YouTube or TikTok, or you saw a post on X, and you went and bought this token, and you've just been holding it ever since. And because of the tariff sell-off, you're probably sitting deep in the red on this position, and you're not sure what to do. Do you continue to hold it in alt season, hoping you make your money back? Do you sell it now? Too many people are afraid to face the loss in their portfolio, so they kind of just ignore those positions. And that is not what you want to be doing right now. You need to examine every single position in your portfolio. Ask yourself, why are you holding that position? Do you understand that position? And do you still have conviction in that position? And if the answer is no, if you don't understand it and you don't have conviction in it, you need to consider maybe selling that position. And if you do have conviction, but you don't understand the position, you need to reevaluate the way you're trading, because how can you have conviction in a position you don't even understand? So that's the first one. Know what's in your portfolio and know why you hold it. The second thing is really closely related, and that's that you need to sell your losers, or the positions that you no longer have conviction in. And that's really hard because psychologically you're wired to have a loss aversion. People hate losing things. They hate losing opportunities. They hate losing money. And your brain does all kinds of gymnastics, mental gymnastics, to try to avoid facing a loss. And one of the worst ones investing is to just kind of ignore that position, hoping that just by some miracle, you're going to make all that money back. But a lot of times the reality is, with a lot of those losing positions, the best thing that you can do is just cut your losses, move on, and reallocate that capital into another position that has a higher probability of succeeding. And this is what I've been doing recently myself. I've been doing some spring cleaning, going through my portfolio and asking myself, why do I hold this position still? And is it time to sell? And I've actually ended up selling quite a few of these positions going through this spring cleaning process, realizing that if I were to look at some of these same altcoins I hold today, I wouldn't buy them. And so if I wouldn't buy them today, why am I still holding them? And some of these things were really hard for me to sell because I get this FOMO of like, what if I sell and then, later it goes up and I'll feel like such an idiot and I'll never forgive myself. And that's one of the really hard parts about selling a position, is because you get that fear, but you can't operate investing based off of fear. And that is always a possibility. You could always sell a position and it goes up and like skyrockets. And that sucks. It's one of the worst things that could possibly happen. But at the same time, you can't bag hold a bunch of dud positions on the, chance outcome that they end up succeeding later down the line. You got to make the best decision you possibly can in the moment. And that means cutting those losers and reallocating that capital elsewhere where you have more confidence. So I ended up selling Optimism, ZK, Goldfinch, Lake, Prisma, Perk, and then some extra SOL that I just had laying around. And this is a sell alert I put out in the Obsidian Council. Every time I buy or sell anything, I post it in the Obsidian Council real time so everyone kind of knows what I'm doing, full transparency, etc. Of that batch of tokens, Goldfinch, I actually did make a decent amount of profit on. And that was just more of a position that I didn't deeply care about. I didn't have a ton of conviction in. And I felt like I was spreading myself too thin between too many tokens. So I ended up getting rid of that one. My Solana position was technically also up, that one was sitting in profit, but that was just one that I randomly had. I had converted stablecoins into Solana a while back to buy stuff on Solana, but I didn't hold it for any specific purpose. So I was clearing out that position. ZK wasn't an actual investment. It was just an airdrop that I got. Optimism was a losing position, but it wasn't like a horrible loser. It's just, again, another one where I was like, why am I even holding this? Like, I don't have deep conviction in Optimism. This isn't one that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make so much money off this one. So why am I even holding this position? And then Lake, Prisma, and Perk were all just massive, massive losses for me. They were all huge duds of trades that it was just time for me to accept the loss, move on, and cut those from my portfolio. And Perk specifically was a really difficult one for me to cut. They currently have a portfolio of $7 to $9 million worth of either liquid investments or investments in gaming studios or games or tokens, etc. And their market cap was, last I checked, 400,000 or 300,000 or something like that. Really, really small. So technically, they would be undervalued. Technically, they're worth a lot more than the market's valuing them at. Because their portfolio of assets is actually pretty huge. But it has been one of the worst performing tokens in the entire market. At one point, I think it was the actual worst performing token in the entire market. I'm not even kidding. At one point, there was a dashboard where out of the top 1,000 tokens, it was at 0%, meaning it had actually underperformed all of the top 1,000 tokens. And sometimes when a token is just that horrible, it's just that hard to hold, and you start to get emotional about it, the best thing you can do is just wash your hands of it and move on. And that leads to my third point, which is you have to have a take profit strategy. Every single one of these tokens that I just sold, with the exception of Prisma, was up 200, 300, 500, 700, in some cases 1,000% at one given point. And I could have easily taken my initial off the table and reduced my risk down to zero. And unfortunately, I didn't do that with any of these tokens. I held them all the way up. and then I held them all the way back down. And that's because I had too much of a fear of missing out. I was too worried the alt season was just over the next hill, that it was going to arrive, in a couple weeks, couple months. And when that happens, all these asset prices would go way higher, which is true. When alt season arrives, a lot of these tokens tend to go way higher. It's a lot more than people expect and a lot more than people are used to in these off seasons when we're getting these molehills of liquidity. And what I used to do during alt season is every time it would double or triple, I would take my initial off the table. And that saved me a lot of pain. There were so many positions that did the same thing where it'd go up massively and then come back down. And that saved me from losing money because, when it triples, take my initial out. I still have money in that token. If it goes higher, I still make a lot of money, but I reduce my risk down to zero. I used to be really good at that. But during this off season, I haven't really been doing that. It's been more stick money and stuff. Wait until all season hits and then make a fortune. That's been my strategy. It's been a lot longer term of a strategy. But the reality is with a lot of these smaller, more volatile tokens, that strategy does not work during an off season like this. Not unless it's just like a position you have massive diehard conviction in, like RSC. I will ride those up. I'll ride it back down. No worries. I have diehard conviction in a position like RSC, but some of these other ones, I didn't have that same level of conviction. And it would have made a lot of sense for when it, skyrocketed for me to just take my initial off the table. The point is, do not make the same mistake that I made. When you go into alt season, or even just right now, when a position doubles or triples or whatever, have a strategy so that you will sell and at least take your initial off the table and protect yourself from any downside risk. The fourth thing is you need to have a system to filter tokens. During an alt season, greed takes over, and you're gonna have everyone recommending you this token, recommending you that token, and the stupidest mistake you could possibly make is just to throw money in all the things people tell you to throw money into. You will lose so much money that way. You have to understand when everything is going up and like people are doing a 10x or a 30x in positions you almost got into, you're gonna start to feel this really strong FOMO where you're not wanting to miss any opportunities, so you're spreading yourself too thin, throwing money into everything everyone is suggesting to you. You have to accept before you get to alt season that you are going to miss so many life-changing opportunities. It's going to make your stomach turn, but that's okay because that's a normal part of the process. Nobody can hit all of those things. Everyone is missing so many life-changing opportunities because nobody has the ability to get into all of those things. That's impossible. You cannot spread yourself across every token in existence, and the ability to identify all the big winners is just not possible for any individual to do. So if your best friend or your neighbor or some guy in the comments suggests a token to you, you don't get in and it skyrockets, accept it. Be okay with it. Don't freak out because it's going to happen over and over and over again. You have to stay level-headed and take the wins that you can get. Odds are a lot of those people that are making a ton of money on those tokens are going to also ride the train back down, at the end of alt season, okay? A lot of those people that make life-changing fortunes lose those life-changing fortunes before the end of things. That is the far bigger risk, and that's why you have to stay level-headed throughout the entire process. The fifth thing is you need to have a stop-loss strategy. This is another thing that I wish I would have had over the past 2 years that I didn't, which is when you have a low conviction position or you have a really risky position, you should tell yourself, hey, if this thing drops 15%, 20% or something, and you pick whatever number you want, that you were going to sell. No matter what happens, if it drops that amount, you're selling, you're cutting your losses, and you're done. You're out of that thing. Rather than watching it bleed down 99%, which is what you're going to do with a lot of these positions if you don't have a stop loss strategy. So pick some sort of stop loss strategy to cut your losses early and preserve that capital for future investments where, hopefully you can make it back and make a fortune on top of that. The final thing is that you need to have some sort of top signal that you're going to listen to fully exit the market before everything collapses. Just like I can confidently say we will see another alt season because of debt dynamics, because of money printing, and just how the world works, I can also confidently say that when the alt season happens, a ton of leverage and an unhealthy market behavior is going to build up that's ultimately going to drive up the price like crazy, but then cause everything to collapse back down to extreme lows into another bear market. And if you don't have something like some sort of bat signal to tell you to sell, you will get too greedy, you'll hold on for too long, and you will ride that roller coaster all the way down to the bottom. And I have a top signals video where I go through all the different top signals that you could look at potentially to try to identify the top. I'll also, despite the insane amount of hate that I'm probably going to get when I do this, put out a video when I'm selling everything. So I'll put out a video update saying, hey, I'm exiting the market. This is why I'm exiting the market. So if you follow my channel, you will see that video when I do that. But if you see talk of the Fed raising rates, you see people uber greedy, everyone's making life-changing money, Everyone seems to be talking about crypto. Your barber, your Uber driver, they're all giving you, crypto picks. That's a huge red flag. And it means that, we're definitely approaching the end state of the market. It can go on for a lot longer than people expect, but that's definitely the red flag of like, hey, we're in the end game, and this game of musical chairs will end at some point. And the way that I like to do it is that when you think we're approaching the end, or maybe you think a top signal's hit and you're like, man, it's time to sell. Sell not your entire portfolio, but 1/3 of your portfolio. This is a lot easier for people to do because, it's really hard to sell the whole thing. You get FOMO, you worry about missing out. But if you sell 1/3, you preserve a ton of your capital, but you still leave 2/3 in the market in case you are wrong and we head higher. And then the next time you really think, oh my gosh, this really is the top, sell that second third, get that out of the market. And now you have 1/3 left in the market. And then, when you are like, absolutely, the market's collapsing, sell the final third, and then you'll be fully exited out of the market. Odds are the first sell you do is going to be a little bit early. Odds are the middle one will probably be right on point. And then the last one will be a little bit late. Net, you're going to make way more money than everyone else because you're going to actually exit the market while everyone else bag holds all the way down to the bottom. By the way, for those who want access to my macro content, weekly video market updates, my buy and sell alerts, and my entire portfolio, I'm opening back up the Obsidian Council June 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the first 25 people who sign up. You can sign up for the waitlist in the description of this video, and I'll send out an email on June 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. As always, none of this was investment advice. I'm obviously not your financial advisor, and you should always do your own research. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see my alt season timing video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.